Hello. We're going to do some more Tripura Rahasya. Let me move this little thing a little closer here so I can put this on here. So that when somebody shows up here, I can read it. I'm trying to, mute. I muted that one. See, I talk to this one, and that one is easier to read comments when it happens. Okay. First, as a reminder, I want to read this one little sort of paragraph from Swami Rama in the introduction talking about what this is about. A great yogi does not belong to any caste, creed, sex, or ethnic group because he or she has already transcended all such superficial limitations. Hi, Nellie. The knowledge that enlightens such an aspirant is called Tripura Rahasya. The text by that name is one of the most significant scriptures in the tradition of Tantra Yoga. Its beauty lies in the fact that it expounds the lofty knowledge of inner truth while systematically offering practical instructions on Shakti Sadhana, the sadhana related to Shakti. In Shakti Sadhana, the aspirant learns to apply all of his resources to the task of awakening the dormant fire within and leading it to higher awareness, finally reaching the highest chakra, the thousand-petaled lotus. In advanced stages of practice, the aspirant knows all about his future, even in the next life. This is the glory of Shakti Sadhana, just as a reminder of where we're going. We're now in the chapter on the helplessness of Hemachyuta and the wondrous sermon given by Hemaleka. Remember that the main story of Tripura Rahasya is Dattatreya is the teacher, Parashurama is the student. Parashurama goes to Dattatreya for teachings. And one of the teachings that Dattatreya gives to Parashurama is telling the story of Hemachyuta and Hemaleka. And Hemachyuta is the prince who hooks up with the princess Hemaleka, and it turns out she is teaching him. Hi, Joe. Hi, Ed. Hi, Walter. And so this is the sermon given by we've already saw in the last chapter that Hemaleka is starting to sort of come out of the closet and let her husband, the prince, know that she really knows what's going on and he does not. He hasn't yet quite figured out who he married. Anyway, after singing this praise of satsang, the company of the wise, Parashurama humbly inquired of Dattatreya, Lord, you mentioned that the company of the wise is the root cause of success in spiritual life. This is true. I have had direct confirmation of this in my own life through the company of the sage Samvarta, which resulted in my spiritual quest. A person is known according to the company he keeps. I'm hanging out with you guys. Pretty cool, huh? People attained greatness merely by associating with Hemaleka. Indeed, she was a great woman. I want to hear in detail how she led the prince to the highest truth. Then listen to that divine story, Dattatreya began. After listening to his wife, the prince lost interest in external objects and became non-attached to the world. Habits make deep grooves in the mind, and it becomes difficult for one to enjoy a life of spiritual freedom. Because of his male ego, the prince kept his emotions hidden from his beloved. He passed the time in a mental dilemma. Sound familiar sometimes? Even when his habits led him to his old ways, he was still aware of his wife's words and was ashamed of himself. The old habits forced him to go back to his previous samskaras, and again he repented. His mind went into the old grooves formed by his habit patterns, and he brooded on the sayings of his wife. She got to him by now. Can't shake her off. The time came when he lost interest in the best of food, clothes, jewels, and beautiful women. Hi, Leela. Hi, Urban. No charm of the world could interest him. He lost his mental equilibrium, as if his entire fortune had been stolen. But because of the subtle yearning for pleasure lingered in his mind, he could not renounce all objects entirely. Maybe that sounds familiar too. Yet, after seeing the imperfection of worldly things, he did not care to enjoy them. Sort of stuck in the middle ground, huh? He became gloomy. Himalaya noticed and asked him privately, "Why do you not look as happy as you did before?" You look sad all the time. Why are you in such a pathetic condition? Do you have a physical illness? According to the wise, the body is subject to disease. It is made by air, bile, and phlegm. An imbalance in any of these three constituents can lead to disorders. Disease produced by imbalance affects the whole body. Restoring the natural balance is difficult. Irregularities pertaining to food, speech, sense activities, time, place, and physical activity disturb equilibrium. Though the cause of these disturbances ordinarily is difficult to know, there are many ways of treating such diseases. If such imbalances of the humors did not exist, no one would have described the various ways of curing numerous diseases. Therefore, tell me, what is the cause of your agony? That's the princess asking, the wife. The prince replied, "Darling, I will tell you the cause of my anguish. After I listened to your discourse, the things that previously appeared pleasant no longer seemed so. I do not find anything in the world that gives me joy." And this that he's going through seems to be part of the journey. We're sort of halfway between one world and the other, and it's kind of confusing, isn't it, at times? Though the king has furnished me with the objects of luxury, they do not cheer me any more than pleasurable objects can console a man about to be hanged. Boy, there's a metaphor, isn't it? You're about to be hanged and all the goodies come. Yet I crave worldly objects because I am still a slave of the subtle tendencies of my mind. Darling, what can I do to be happy? It's quite a question, isn't it? Aha! So this matches today somehow, huh, Nellie? Darling, what can I do to be happy? Seeing her husband's anguish, Himalaya realized that because of her previous discussion with him, the prince was beginning to develop dispassion, vairagya. He had the potential for spiritual growth. Otherwise, the dispassion would not have unfolded in him, for a philosophical discourse cannot make the least impression on those who do not desire liberation. Boy, there's a lesson in that, huh? When your friends and family want to talk to you about what you're doing. Only after prolonged devotion, when the goddess Tripura bestows her grace, can a person attain the highest state. The wise Hamaleka revealed the wisdom of Tripura to her beloved husband. With measured words she imparted the secret wisdom to the prince. Then that great learned lady, without exposing her learning, started telling her husband this story. Here we go again. "Oh, Prince, this has happened to me. My mother gave me a maidservant whose nature was fairly good. Later on, she associated herself with a bad woman." Now, this section we're going through here, it's a little hard to track. If you ever sit down with pencil and paper and try to link these up, we can see them. But as it goes through the characters in the story, it's a little bit hard to follow exactly what is a symbol of what. And I'm saying that just to suggest that it doesn't really matter. Just take it in. "Later on, my mother gave me a maidservant whose nature was fairly good. Later on, she associated herself with a bad woman. This bad woman was both creative and crafty, and I associated with her without my mother's knowledge. The maidservant was very dear to me. Overpowered by the influence of her crafty companion, I started misbehaving. Because I thought of my maidservant constantly, I became like her. That wily witch tempted my maidservant with beautiful but worthless objects. In secret, she turned my maidservant over to her son, Moha, attachment, who was always drunk and had bloodshot eyes. Moha became her lover. He would often forcibly enjoy her, even in front of me. She was possessed by him, but she never abandoned me. Therefore, I became involved with him too. They eventually had a son, Astira, unsteady nature, who was stupid like his father. This son was born in an adult body. He was very unstable and inherited all the evil qualities from his ancestors. He spontaneously developed a talent for drawing all kinds of pictures. Although he was already clever, his father and grandmother educated him further and helped him to develop his skills. His activities were very creative. My maidservant, though essentially pure, was influenced by the company of that wicked woman. She became attached to her lover and son and began living with them. I could not break our friendship because I was too attached to her. I could not develop self-reliance, thus I became dependent on her. Her lover tried to play with my emotions, but I did not heed his crafty suggestions. Pure by nature, nobody could persuade me. Rumors spread far and wide about me, and the people of the world started thinking that I was involved with that wretched man. My maidservant left that unsteady son with me and remained in her lover's embrace forever. I started to bring up that unsteady youth. Then, inspired by his grandmother, he established a relationship with an adult woman. His fiancée, Kapala, ever moving, ever changing, could metamorphose at any moment, taking the most amazing and surprising forms at will. Through her great craftiness, she controlled her lover. That unsteady one was able to travel innumerable miles in a moment. He would never tire, yet he was always restless. Whenever and wherever he wanted to visit his fiancée, he appeared there instantly. She entertained him by assuming any form he fancied. Sounds like the inner process, doesn't it? Living with that unsteady youth, she had 5 sons, all devoted to their parents and all having distinct characteristics. My friend gave them into my care. For my friend's sake, I helped them become even stronger and more powerful. Those 5 sons built huge and beautiful homes. Then, aided by their mother, they dominated their own father. Yeah, soap. It's a soap opera, isn't it? Hi, Hashim. Hello. Hello, Maya. They called their father whenever they wanted. Once the father visited his eldest son's residence, where he heard the sweetest of melodies, enchanting instruments, and other pleasant sounds. Sometimes he listened to the chanting of the Vedas and the tantric texts, and sometimes to the tinkling of jewelry or the sweet song of the cuckoo. He was delighted living under his son's control and being constantly exposed to pleasing and harmonious sounds. But later the same son turned against his father. The father was distressed to hear the roaring of menacing animals such as tigers and thundering blasts of storm clouds and the lamentations of many people. Another time, his second son took him to his home, where he was offered a comfortable seat, bed, and clothing. There he found things with the qualities of hardness and softness, and heat or cold. Pleasing objects were joys for him, but unpleasant sensations made him sad. Sounding familiar? A little like your inner process? He visited the residence of his third son, where he saw objects of many colors. They had many shapes. Some were nice and some were dreadful. Among them, some were disgusting, some bright, some exciting, and some full of darkness. Hi, Noah. While he was observing those various objects, the fourth son invited him to his house. At his son's home, he found different kinds of fruits and delicacies. There he ate many delicious things. Some of these were as sweet as nectar, some sour, salty, bitter, astringent, or pungent. While he was enjoying these various tastes, his last son brought him to his house and presented him with many kinds of flowers. There he experienced the fragrance of many plants. Some were fragrant and some stank. Some had mild aromas while others were too strong. Some smells were pleasant to the senses, others were refreshing, and a few were overpowering. In this way, he experienced numerous objects. When he experienced something pleasing, he wanted to retain it, but exposure to unpleasant things frustrated him. Thus, he continued visiting his sons. The sons were very much devoted to their father. Without him, they would not go near enjoyable objects. But sometimes, when the unsteady father was enjoying himself in his sons' homes, he would steal some objects and take them home. There he would share them with his wife, Kapala. After some time, one of his wife's sisters, Mahashana, unsatiable one, seduced him, and he married her also. Now that unsteady man became attached to his second wife and was forced to supply many kind of objects in order to make her happy. She would instantly consume whatever he would bring and demand even more. Enticed by his wife, he was constantly busy. His 5 sons brought objects, but she would devour them and be hungry again in a moment. Wow. She made her husband and his sons supply her with many objects of enjoyment. So she had two sons. Soon she had two sons of her own. One of them was Jivalamuka, fiery mouth, and the other was Nindivrita, immoral character. She loved them very much. Often the unsteady father suffered and fainted while embracing his fiery-mouthed son. He was frequently slandered because of the conduct of his corrupt son. He became miserable. Out of attachment, my maidservant sympathized with her unsteady son and keenly felt his pain. Gradually, she became attached to her two grandchildren also. She almost died because of them. I was always with her. Therefore, darling, I was also lost and was plunged into untold misery. I remained miserable for many years, suffering because of the slavery of my maidservant. By then, her unsteady son was fully enslaved by his second wife. And remember, it's still Hamaleka, the goddess wife, who's telling the story. One day he departed for a city that had 10 gates. He lived there with his mother, his second wife, and the sons. He wanted to be calm, but day and night he was in misery. Attached to his two younger sons, he had to face terrible suffering and condemnation. He got tired of constantly visiting his other 5 sons. He never experienced a moment of tranquility. Suffering from her son's deeds, my maidservant nearly collapsed. Yet in this condition she lived with her husband, daughter-in-law, and grandchildren in that city. Her foolish father-in-law, her husband's grandmother, his in-laws, and her husband's other wife nourished her. While she lived in that city, she was completely dominated by her husband. Because of my love for my friend, I also lived there, doing everything for her. Although I almost died because of my friend's suffering, I protected her whole family. Sweetheart, without me, they could not have survived. I protected them all. Protecting all of our inner habits, huh? However, under the influence of ignorance, I lost my equilibrium, became unsteady and fickle, and desiring enjoyments, identified myself with the objects of enjoyment. When I kept the company of Moha, I became stupid. Due to the company of my maidservant, I had to play many roles. Had I left her, they would have died. Because I was in bad company, the stupid men thought that I was a corrupt woman, but good men thought otherwise. My mother was holy. She was free from negativity, both mentally and physically. She was more persuasive than space and more subtle than the atom. She had profound knowledge. Even so, due to the absence of egoism, she pretended that she knew nothing. While doing everything, she acted like one who did nothing. She was the source of all and at the same time self-existent. She was fully detached, though she was the very basis of all. Although she was formless, she could assume all forms. In the midst of everything, she remained untouched. She was present here, there, and everywhere, but was unnoticeable. She was full of bliss, yet not noticeable, and she had no parents. Of course, she has innumerable children. Like waves of the ocean, I have innumerable sisters, O Prince. We behaved alike. O Prince, we behaved alike. I am endowed with the highest power of mantra. That is why I live and sympathize with my maidservant and sisters, yet am pure like my mother. Gosh, the soap does not stop, but how sweet the stories are. Well, they're sweet, Nellie, and they ought to also be disturbing. We want these stories to shock us into awakening. Indeed, a message to us, indeed. I am endowed with the highest power of mantra. That is why I live and sympathize with my maidservant and sisters, yet am pure like my mother. In that city, whenever the unsteady son of my friend got tired, he would rest beside his mother. Whenever he slept, all his children also slept. No one remained awake. During that sleep period, only Prachara, a friend of the unsteady one, would travel back and forth through the two eastern gates to protect the city. My friend would sleep beside her unsteady son. At that time, my friend's mother-in-law and the immortal seductress would cover and protect them. Whenever they slept, I would slip away to my mother. Embracing her, I would be filled with joy. The moment they awoke, I instantly returned and was caught up with them again. Astira, the unsteady son, had a close friend named Prachara, who looked after the whole city. He was only one, but had many forms and was popular in the city. He protected everyone and always helped them contact the objects of joy. Without him, they would fall apart like the beads on a necklace after the thread snaps. Working with me, Prachara kept that city alive. He inspired and maintained the whole city. When the city became ancient and began to crumble, he led them all to another city. In this way, under the protection of Prachara, the unsteady one became the inhabitant of different kinds of cities. Although the unsteady son was born of a holy mother, was supported by the powerful Prachara, and nourished by me, he was miserable all the time. He never abandoned his 2 wives and 7 children, though they tormented him. He continued suffering and never found peace. His sons kept dragging him in different directions. Under the influence of his 2 wives, he had no occasion to rest. Affected by his fiery-mouthed son, he would faint from fever, and no remedy could cure him. At other times, in the company of his corrupt son, he was the subject of vicious slander and nearly died of shame. Because of his disreputable nature, he restlessly moved from one city to another. Each city had a different character. Sometimes he was forced to live in the open, surrounded by wild creatures. Sometimes he lived in cold, dirty, and dark places. In this way, living in bad company, my maidservant suffered due to her attachment to her son. Sweetheart, even though I was pure, because of the association with her family, I was influenced and thus became sad. Who in the world can be happy while living in bad company? This is just like a person who is trying to quench his thirst with water from a mirage. Quench the thirst from water from a mirage. In this way the time passed, and my friend, in deep sorrow, spoke to me privately. Through me she found a good husband. Thus she was able to purify herself and control the negative thoughts and emotions. In my company she became aware of the Mother Divine, and overwhelmed by her presence, attained freedom. After that she was in bliss all the time. Bliss became an inseparable part of her life. O Prince, only by attaining inner wisdom can eternal happiness and the Divine Mother's grace be obtained. Now I have imparted the way of attaining bliss. This is my direct experience. And thus ends chapter 5 with the teachings of bondage and the release of Hemachyuta. I think let's stop there, and next time we'll do the next chapter, I think. That's pretty rich stuff, isn't it? And then comes the doubts of Hemachyuta and the teachings of Hemaleka on on firm faith. So, and Hemachyuta still is going to be facing some waves of doubt, huh? Quite a journey that this is on. This dude Hemachyuta is on, and Hemaleka is a pretty cool infinite teacher, is she not? And I just love this story of the two of them. And again, remember, it's a story being told by Dattatreya to Parashurama. But it's just like going to a movie theater, isn't it? When you go into a movie, sometimes you get so absorbed in that movie. And so going through that, I find it very easy to get absorbed in what Hemaleka is saying to Hemachyuta and temporarily lose sight of the fact that we are being told a story narrated by Dattatreya to Parashurama. And just in going through the text together, suddenly we're lost in the story of Hemaleka and Hemachyuta. But it's kind of fun, and whether we exactly follow the details or not, it's pretty clear that it's a symbol of the way our minds and our ego structure and all work, isn't it? Quite a journey. Thank you for visiting and riding through this journey with me a little bit. To be continued. I guess we're going to continue with the story. I'm doing this a few times a week so that it doesn't drag out over 6 months to go through this. And so I think we're doing it again tomorrow night. We'll do the next chapter. So anyway, have a nice meditation. And there's nice little hearts there. And let's see, who is that? I think that's Leela. I think that's Leela. Yeah, that's Leela. Leela hearts. Thank you, Leela. Nice little Leela hearts popping, 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 popping. And there's a thumbs up. I think that's a Nellie. Now Nellie and Leela are having icon competitions. What was that one there? That one looked like Hashim's. Is Hashim? Yeah, that was Hashim. I don't know what that symbol is. It's too small. And that was Maya. Hi, Maya. These little things, it's kind of a fun little game to catch this. They're only, like 2 millimeters apart. So I got to catch it quickly to catch who's pushing what button. And now we got some laughter going on, huh? So they're all fun. So thank you again for playing. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow's Saturday here, and so we're together in one way or another 3 times tomorrow. At least I'll be here, and maybe see you during 1 or 2 or 3 of those times. Nice little hearts, Nellie. Bye-bye. And remember to find the Tripura on the other side of the Om. That's where you find Tripura, is in the silence after the Om. And the A, the U, and the are the 3 cities. And Tripura is the one who dwells in those 3 cities. The Tripura Rahasya, the secret of Tripura. So, bye-bye.